What if every time you gave in to lust, a part of you vanished? Not physically, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Imagine a mirror that reflects your desires, shows you pleasure, shows you satisfaction, but hides the cracks forming behind your eyes. The truth, that mirror is cursed, because what it doesn't show you is far more dangerous than what it does. Most people think lust is harmless, a quick escape, a guilty pleasure. But what if I told you it's quietly reprogramming your brain, stealing your drive, your confidence, your power without you even noticing? Every scroll, every click, every one last time feels like nothing at the moment. But behind the scenes, something dark is happening. You start to lose your edge. Your focus slips. Your motivation dies. And the worst part, you don't even see it happening. Why do so many ambitious, talented people stay stuck in the same place for years? Why do they start strong but lose their fire midway? It's because they're trapped in a loop designed to keep them distracted, weak and blind. Lust promises everything and delivers nothing, and yet it keeps calling you back again and again. But there's a way out. Not through guilt, not through shame, but through awareness. Through understanding what this really does to you and how to take your power back. Stick with me till the end, because once you see what the cursed mirror hides, you'll never look at yourself or your habits the same way again. It feels good, doesn't it? That rush, the quick hit of dopamine, the surge of excitement, the escape from boredom or stress. Lust wraps itself in pleasure. It feels natural, even necessary. In that moment, nothing else matters. You forget your responsibilities, your purpose, your pain. It's just you and that one desire fulfilled. But here's the twist. The more beautiful it feels in the moment, the more brutal the aftermath can be, because lust is an illusion. It gives you pleasure, but takes something in return. And what it takes is almost invisible at first. Your time, your clarity, your ambition. You don't notice it right away. That's how it works. That's how it traps you. Think of it like a mirror, a cursed one. On the surface, it shows you exactly what you want to see. The image is perfect, pleasing, seductive. It gives you the version of yourself that feels in control, satisfied, even empowered. But this mirror doesn't show the shadows. It doesn't show what's fading behind your eyes, what's breaking inside your mind, the pieces that fall apart when no one's watching. That mirror, after lust, you don't see your weakened discipline. You don't see your lowered self-respect. You don't notice how your energy to chase real goals begins to slip away. Little by little, you still look the same, but inside something's different. And the more you look into that cursed mirror, the more disconnected you become from who you really are. Lust hides behind a mask of pleasure, but underneath it's stealing your fire, the same fire you need to build your dream, to fight for your future, to become the person you say you want to be. You begin to live in two different realities. In one, you scroll, watch, indulge. In the other, you feel frustrated, stuck, like something's off. And the messed up part is you can't even connect the dots, because lust doesn't destroy you in one day. It's not like a car crash. It's like slow poison. You think you're fine, until you're not. That's why the mirror is cursed. It's not broken. It's worse, it's perfectly crafted to blind you from the truth. It reflects your outer self and hides the inner damage. You don't see how your self-image is corroding. You don't notice how your standards are silently falling. You think you're still sharp, still focused, still on your path, but deep down, something's slipping. Ask yourself this. Why do you feel so tired all the time? Why do you set goals but never fully chase them? Why do you feel powerful for a second but worthless right after? The answer might not be outside you. It might be the thing you keep doing when no one's looking. The very thing you tell yourself is no big deal. But it is a big deal. Because every time you give in, the mirror rewrites a part of who you are. It rewires your brain to seek comfort instead of greatness. And the worst part, it makes you okay with that. Comfortable, numb, distracted. You weren't born to live like that. You weren't born to chase shadow. You were built for more. You can't change your life if you can't see what's holding you back. That's why this awareness matters. Not to judge yourself, but to free yourself. Because once you recognize the illusion, the power of the curse breaks, you stop chasing the short-term hit and start reclaiming your long-term fire. You look in the mirror and for the first time, you see everything. Not just what lust shows you, but what it's been hiding all along. You look into the mirror and what do you see? A confident face, calm eye, maybe even a faint smile, the kind that says, I'm fine, and maybe for a moment, you are. But mirrors only reflect the surface. They don't show the exhaustion tucked behind your expression. They don't reveal the battles happening inside your mind. They only show what you want to see, not what you need to confront. That's what makes it cursed. Lust gives you the illusion of being fulfilled. It paints you as powerful, bold, in control. You indulge, and for a few minutes, you feel like you've won. That cursed mirror agrees. It nods back with validation. You feel lighter, satisfied. But what if you zoomed out? What if the mirror could show the whole picture? You'd see that the lightness is temporary and the weight returns, heavier than before. This is how the curse works. It delays the truth. Lust seduces you with surface-level pleasure, while hiding the inner cost. You don't immediately feel the damage. It waits. Slowly it drains your mental energy, your creativity, your fire to improve. You become numb. And worse, you start accepting it as normal. And all the while the mirror keeps lying to you. It doesn't reflect the anxiety that creeps in later, the guilt that settles deep in your chest when the screen turns black, the regret that whispers, "Why did I do that again?" It doesn't show how your drive to build, grow, and evolve is being chipped away, one hit of dopamine at a time. You think you're fine because you don't look broken, but decay isn't always loud. Sometimes it's silent. You stop dreaming as big. You stop waking up with urgency. You stop feeling like you matter. And still the mirror shows you that same familiar face, calm, composed, unbothered. But inside you're falling out of alignment with who you once were. You notice your mood dipping more often. You're irritated without reason. Your ambition feels distant, like a memory instead of a mission. That's the curse. The decay is invisible until it's deep, until you're too tired to fight back. Because the mirror's reflection is built to keep you comfortable, and comfort is dangerous when it replaces purpose. You weren't made to just get through the day. You weren't made to seek the same hollow pleasure over and over, convincing yourself that this is okay as long as nobody knows. But you know, deep down you know. The truth is, lust doesn't destroy your life in dramatic, explosive ways. It does something worse. It dulls you. It softens the edge you need to chase greatness. It turns high standards into average habits. It changes how you view yourself. And once your self-image starts shifting, everything else follows. Your decisions, your energy, your focus, they all start to reflect a version of you that's not fully alive. Yet when you look in the mirror, you still look the same. That's what makes it so dangerous. But here's the catch. The mirror only has power if you believe it. Once you become aware of what it's hiding, the illusion breaks. You stop trusting the shallow validation. You start questioning the cost of that quick escape. And from there you start seeing clearly, not just what's in front of you, but what's been buried beneath the surface all along. You start realizing that your true strength doesn't come from how you look, but from how you feel when no one's watching, from how aligned you are with your vision, from the fire that comes when your habits match your goal. That's when you stop looking at the cursed mirror and start building a reality you no longer need to escape from. It doesn't hit you right away. That's the trick. The first few times it feels harmless, maybe even fun, just a release. A habit you think you're in control of, nothing major. You move on with your day. No scars, no signs of damage. But that's where the danger begins, because the effects don't come like a punch. They come like a slow leak dripping silently, changing you before you even realize it. One of the first things to slip is your self-respect. You might not notice it, because you still dress well, talk confidently, and go about life like everything's in place. But something shifts internally. You start tolerating behavior you once refused. You make excuses for slipping standards. You begin lying to yourself just enough to stay comfortable. It's not that bad. I'll quit next week. I deserve this. These small justifications erode your foundation. And with that erosion comes a slow death of discipline. You wake up later. You scroll more. You delay the hard work. Lust isn't just stealing your time. It's stealing your ability to stay sharp. It clouds your focus, numbs your motivation, and turns self-control into a daily struggle. You want to be productive, to push forward, but there's a fog, a weight you can't quite explain. And it's not just a bad day. It's the result of decisions stacking up quietly behind the scenes. Then comes the guilt. It doesn't scream. It whispers. It shows up in moments when you're alone, in the silence between tasks, or just before you fall asleep. That sinking feeling, that low hum of "I could be doing better." At first you ignore it, then you start feeling like you're living a double life. On the outside you're functioning. even smiling, but inside something feels off. That shame starts eating away at your self-image, making you question your worth in subtle ways. And when your self-worth takes a hit, everything gets affected. Your goals, your relationships, your mental clarity. You stop aiming high because deep down you don't feel like you deserve better. That's how powerful this hidden effect is. It doesn't just make you feel bad. It makes you become someone you never planned to be. Quietly, slowly, repeatedly. The worst part, you start craving the fantasy more than real life. Lust programs your brain to chase hyperstimulation, perfect images, instant highs, fast pleasure. Real relationships, with all their flaws, effort and emotional depth, begin to feel boring. You pull away from reality. You avoid vulnerability. You choose the screen over a soul. You begin to feel safer in the illusion than in connection. This is where the real trap lies. When you feed the fantasy more than you feed your growth, you lose the hunger to build something meaningful. You stop believing in effort. You settle for comfort. You chase empty highs while watching your real potential gather dust in the background. All the while your confidence drains like water through cracked hands. None of this happens overnight. It happens in silence, in the background of your routine. And because it's so gradual, you think you're okay. You think you can stop but days turn into weeks, and weeks into months. And then one day you wake up and feel like a stranger to yourself. But the fact that you're here, reading this, proves something. You still have the awareness. You still have the power to break the loop, to reclaim your to rebuild your self-respect, to reconnect with reality, and create something real, something lasting. And it starts with seeing what's been hidden all along, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. And from that moment forward, change becomes not just possible, but inevitable. There's something terrifying about slow damage. You don't see it coming. There's no warning bell, no dramatic fall. You wake up one day and realize you're not the same person anymore. Not in a huge obvious way, but in hundreds of small invisible ones. Lust doesn't just affect your now, it rewires your future. What begins as a moment of escape slowly reshapes who you become. The first sign is a quiet loss of drive. You stop waking up with that spark in your chest, the hunger to build, to create, to chase something meaningful. You still have dreams, but they live in the background, no longer urgent. You tell yourself you'll get to them tomorrow, next week, later, but later never comes, because your energy is always just a little too low. Lust feeds short-term pleasure while starving long-term vision, and without vision you drift. Every time you choose that quick release over focused action, you send a message to your brain, this is enough. Eventually your brain believes you. Why push harder when cheap satisfaction is always within reach? You stop giving your best. You settle for what's easy, and slowly your standards begin to rot. Worse than the lack of motivation is the disconnection from something deeper. Your spirit, your higher self, your purpose, whatever you believe in. Lust puts a barrier between you and that. It pulls you away from clarity, away from truth. You can't feel connected to your mission when you're constantly distracted. The more you indulge, the less you feel aligned. You begin to feel distant from yourself, like a stranger is living your life. You might try to meditate, journal, or reconnect, but something always feels off. That's because lust numbs your spiritual frequency. It buries your inner voice beneath layers of noise, and when that voice goes quiet, decisions become harder, life feels heavier, and you begin to feel lost, even when everything seems okay from the outside. Then there's what it does to your relationships. Real love requires presence, patience, and depth, but lust trains your brain to seek perfection, not connection. When you're constantly exposed to hyper-polished images and unrealistic fantasies, you begin to view real people through a distorted lens. They're not exciting enough, not flawless enough. You stop valuing emotional intimacy because your brain is wired to chase surface-level thrill. This isn't just about romance. It affects your friendships, your family, your ability to truly connect. You become impatient, irritated, emotionally unavailable. You pull away from the people who care, not because you want to, but because your capacity to feel deeply has been dulled. Lust doesn't just change how you see others, it changes how much you care. And the scariest part, you don't even notice when it becomes a loop. The first time feels like a choice, the second feels like a pattern, the fifth, the 10th, the 100th. It becomes a routine. You don't think why you're doing it anymore, you just do it. You feel a little discomfort, boredom or stress, and like muscle memory, you reach for the escape. It becomes automatic. That's addiction, not always in a loud, dramatic way. But in the quiet compulsion that creeps into your daily rhythm, you tell yourself you'll stop tomorrow, after this one last time. But the longer you stay in the loop, the harder it becomes to climb out. Because now it's not just a habit, it's part of your identity. You forget what life felt like before. But here's the truth. Your identity is not fixed. This loop doesn't define you. It only holds you as long as you let it. The moment you recognize the pattern, you regain power. Because the same way you trained your brain to seek the temporary, you can retrain it to crave something real, lasting and life-changing. But it starts with seeing the long-term cost. Because once you truly see it, you can't go back. There's a kind of pain that doesn't show on your face. A quiet breakdown, hidden behind smiles, laughter, even confidence. On the outside you look fine, put together, even powerful, but inside, something feels off. You start feeling like an actor in your own life, playing the role of someone strong while carrying a storm no one sees. That's what lust does to your self-image. It doesn't just affect your actions, it distorts the way you see yourself. And over time, it becomes harder and harder to tell what's real and what's just a performance. At first it's subtle. You still carry yourself with pride. You still say the right things, post the right pictures, talk about your dreams. But deep down, you begin to notice the gap between who you are and who you pretend to be. You feel strong in public, but weak in private, confident in your words, but doubtful in your thoughts. You're doing everything right, but it doesn't feel right anymore. The worst part, you can't tell anyone, because when your image depends on strength, admitting weakness feels like defeat. So you bottle it up. You keep moving, you push harder, but deep down, something's cracked. That internal crack shows itself in the quietest ways. You hesitate more. You doubt yourself in moments where you once stood firm. You stop trusting your own instincts. You second guess your worth. And as those thoughts pile up, your self-respect begins to erode. Not in a dramatic collapse, but in a slow, invisible crumble. You stop believing you're capable of real change. You start thinking this is just who you are now. Someone who talks big but can't follow through. Someone who dreams but doesn't act. You may still have moments of motivation, but they're shorter. The voice inside you that once shouted, "Let's go," now only whispers, "Maybe later." And the longer you stay in this place, the more distant your true self begins to feel. The version of you that was hungry, focused, full of fire, it fades into memory. You become a shadow of what you could be, and you know it. That's the part that hurts the most. Because lust doesn't just steal your energy or your time, it steals your identity. It makes you forget who you were before the loop started, before the numbing, before the compromise. Eventually, your mind adapts. You build a new identity around this weakened version of yourself. You stop aiming higher because the belief that you deserve better gets buried. You say this is just how life is, but that's not the truth. It's just what you've been conditioned to accept. This hollow feeling isn't weakness, it's a warning, a sign that something inside you wants to break free, because deep within you still remember who you were before you still remember the strength, the ambition, the clarity. That version of you isn't gone. It's just been buried under cycles of guilt, distraction and self-abandonment. The shift begins the moment you stop lying to yourself. When you finally admit that the person in the mirror isn't the whole story, that beneath the surface, there's a warrior waiting to rise again. You don't need permission. You don't need perfection. You just need honesty. Because once you admit how far you've drifted, you can finally start rowing back. You can start rebuilding the kind of self-image that isn't dependent on pretending, but rooted in truth, discipline and self-respect. The strongest version of you isn't the one who hides his weakness. It's the one who faces it and chooses to fight anyway. That version is still inside you. It always was. There comes a moment, quiet but powerful, when you finally see it, the lie, the illusion, the cursed mirror that's been showing you only the surface, while hiding the truth. And in that moment something inside you wakes up. You realize you've been trapped, not by chains, but by comfort, not by pain, but by pleasure. And that awareness is the first key to freedom. The mirror never told you the whole story. It showed you confidence while hiding your shame. It reflected pleasure while masking your pain. But now you see the cracks. You notice how often you've run toward distraction, how often you've chosen short-term highs over long-term growth. Self-awareness isn't just about knowing what you're doing. It's about seeing why you're doing it. What pain are you trying to escape? What part of your life feels so empty that lust becomes the easiest way to fill it? Once you recognize the pattern, the next step is replacing it. not with guilt, not with shame, but with purpose. Because lust doesn't disappear by willpower alone. It gets overpowered by something greater. Purpose gives you direction. Discipline gives you structure. When your days are filled with meaningful goals, when your calendar is packed with progress, you leave less space for temptation. Start small. Set a schedule. Choose one thing each day that moves you forward. A workout, a book, a project, a goal. Every action that builds your future weakens the grip of your past. Discipline isn't about being perfect. It's about choosing what matters most over what feels good now. Every time you resist the urge and redirect your focus, you strengthen your character. You're not losing pleasure, you're gaining power. And to keep that power, your mindset must evolve. Stop viewing lust as something normal or harmless. Start seeing it for what it is, a thief. It steals your time, energy, clarity, and self-worth. Every time you indulge, you're feeding a version of you that settles. But you weren't built to settle. You were built to grow. When you rewire your brain to value progress over pleasure, purpose over comfort, everything changes. This mindset shift won't happen overnight. You'll slip. You'll fall. That's okay. What matters is that you keep getting back up with sharper awareness and stronger intention. Growth is never a straight line, but the more you choose growth, the more you feel alive. You stop needing artificial highs. You stop feeling hollow after fake wins. You start building something real brick by brick. But even with awareness, purpose and mindset, you need one more thing: accountability. You can't do this alone, not for long. Talk to someone, a mentor, a friend, a coach, someone who understands your vision and holds you to it. When you hide your struggles, they grow. When you expose them, they shrink. Let someone into your process, not to judge you, but to remind you who you are when you forget. Track your habits, write it down, celebrate your wins, learn from your setbacks, make your growth visible. Because what gets tracked, gets improved. It's not about being obsessed, it's about being intentional. The curse loses its power the moment you decide to face it, not run from it. When you choose to build a life so meaningful, so full of energy and direction, that you no longer need to escape. This journey won't always be easy, but it will always be worth it. Because every step forward is a step back to who you were meant to be, the real you, the one who doesn't need illusions to feel alive. And once you escape the curse, you'll never look at the mirror the same way again. You've made it this far, which already means something inside you refuses to settle. You're not just watching a video, you're searching for something deeper. And maybe, just maybe, this wasn't just content for you, it was a mirror. But not the cursed one, a clearer one. The kind that shows not just what you are, but what you could be. We live in a world where distractions are designed to feel like rewards. Where lust is packaged as pleasure but delivered as poison. Where the things that feel the best in the moment often leave you feeling the worst afterward. And if no one told you that before, let this video be that wake-up call. Because here's the truth. You don't break out of this trap by accident. You break it by choice. A choice to stop trading your future for 5 seconds of escape. A choice to stop chasing dopamine and start chasing discipline. A choice to stop feeding the weaker version of you and start becoming the strongest version you've ever imagined. You see, this battle isn't just about avoiding lust. It's about reclaiming your identity. It's about proving to yourself that your self-worth isn't defined by temptation, but by transformation. That your value isn't in your urges, but in your ability to rise above them. And no, this isn't about being perfect. You'll fall, you'll slip. That's human. But you'll also rise, stronger, wiser, more aware. Because awareness is your weapon, purpose is your shield. And every time you choose growth over comfort, you're rewriting your story. The greatest version of you is not buried deep inside some fantasy. It's forged in the fire of self-control. It's shaped by the days you say no to temporary pleasure, so you can say yes to permanent power. Ask yourself, how much longer are you willing to pretend that this cycle isn't changing you? How many more weeks will you waste before you realize that the clock doesn't pause for anyone? Not even those lost in pleasure. Because while you're busy escaping, your goals are collecting dust. Your dreams are waiting on you. Your future self is screaming through time, begging you to wake up. So let this be the moment. The moment you look beyond the illusion. The moment you stop blaming the world and start reclaiming your mind. The moment you decide that you're done being controlled. From now on, you don't need a cursed mirror to tell you who you are. You know who you are. You remember who you are. And if you've forgotten, that's okay. Just don't forget again. Because the version of you who's disciplined, focused, powerful, driven, unstoppable, That version is not a fantasy, it's real, and it's waiting. You've seen what lust hides, you've seen what it costs. Now go build a life that no longer needs to escape. Go build the man you were born to become. This is where the curse ends, and your transformation begins.